Today I'm making some slippers. I gathered my fat quarters, some leather, which I ended up having to replace later, some stiff fusible interfacing, and some batting. Of course, I had to make copies of the pattern, and here is the pattern book and instructions that I'm going to be using to make my slippers today. These are the 3 pieces that I will be using to make my slippers. This is the top section of the slipper. This is the fabric for the inner and outer parts, as well as the interfacing. These pieces will be the inner and outer parts of the sole of the slipper, as well as the stiff interfacing. I also had to cut 2 strips of fabric, as well as cut out a bow that I wanted to use in place of the fabric yo-yos. First, I'm going to start off with the top part of the slipper. I pinned the outer fabric to the fabric batting, and I'm just going to stitch around the outer perimeter of the slipper, and the inner part will be dealt with later. After stitching the outer seams of each of the top of the slippers, I'm going to fold each top, and I'm going to stitch that back seam so that the top part of the upper part of the slipper is stitched together. Off camera, I also stitched the back parts of the slipper lining, and then I pinned it to the outer part of the slipper, right sides together, and I'm going to stitch the slippers together at the top of the slipper, which is what I'm doing here. Once I finished stitching the slippers together, I cut in little notches on the rounded sections of the slippers so that when I turn the fabric right side out, the fabric lays together so it's not bunched up. And once I did that, I went and I pressed my slippers together so that I'd have a cleaner edge. This is what my slippers look like. Aren't they cute? I pressed the little seams and I'm ready to stitch in the casing. According to the book, you are to stitch around the very top about 1/4 inch away to make the top part of the casing. And then you are instructed to make 2 additional lines of stitching with like about 1 inch open. You see that there's like 1 inch open right there. And in the middle part, I'm going to thread some, I believe it's 1/4 inch elastic, which is what I have here. And that is going to keep my slippers close to my feet. Here is a closer look at where I'm going to feed the elastic through. And I use this handy little tool to help me to feed the elastic all the way through that casing. And here's a little trick that I like to do. I will pin one end of the elastic as I feed through the other end of the elastic all the way through the slipper, just so that I don't end up losing the end of the elastic and then I have to go fish for it again. It's just an easier trick I do. Once the elastic is fed all the way through the slipper, I take out that tool and then I am going to carefully stitch the elastic together at the ends, and then I'm going to carefully stitch up the opening of the casing. And that is what the top of the slipper looks like. Now it's time to work on the fabric strap. So here I folded that strip of fabric and I pressed it, and here I sewed it and I turned it right side out and pressed it. The next thing I have to do is feed that 1/2 inch wide strip of elastic through each of those fabric strip casings, and those are going to serve as the straps for the Mary Jane slippers. This time I use the safety pin to keep the elastic onto that tool that I have, just so that it is easier to feed it through. Otherwise, it doesn't fit through the eye of that tool. So that's why I use the safety pin to pin the elastic to that. And I think I end up just using a pin to secure the end so the elastic doesn't get fed all the way through the strap. Once you feed it all the way through, you pull out that handy little tool and try to get the elastic evenly through the band, and then stitch the ends, and you have your fabric band. Now I've pinned the top part of the slipper to the inner part of the sole. So I stitched it all the way up, stitched it all the way around, and then I pinned that elastic strap to the slipper. Even though I didn't like the original placement of the straps, I still decided to stitch them where they are originally placed on the pattern. After I stitched the sole to the slipper, I went around and I notched the fabric again at the edges, and I pressed it down because this is where the outer sole of the slipper is going to be attached. So it's just easier if you just notch the outside of the fabric. And then you also have to stitch the bottom part, like that leftover fabric that you see. You have to stitch that to the inner part of the slipper, just so it lays down, and it just makes it easier for the next part that you're going to do. I am not gonna lie, stitching that part onto the bottom of the slippers, or the inside of the slipper, was not easy. So I kind of had to fiddle with it, and I had to be very patient with this part because I didn't want to stitch the slipper to itself, which I'm like notorious for doing that. Seam ripper is my best friend, but I actually got it done, and this is what it looked like afterward. And this is what the slipper looks like. It's hard to tell when it's bunched up because of the elastic, but once you open it up and look at it, it's really cute. The next part is to secure the Mary Jane strap to the top of the slipper at the very top seam of the casing, just so you don't get that 1/4 inch elastic that's in the casing stitched in together with the strap, because you want to have that loose and free when you put the slipper on and take it off. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm carefully stitching the strap to the top of each of the side of the slipper. And that is the finished top of the slipper. Now it's time to use the faux leather sole. You take the fusible stiff interfacing, even though it's not very fusible to the faux leather, and you carefully have to pin it and actually hand stitch it to the bottom of the slipper. This is how my first slipper came out. I hand stitched it with a slip stitch, and this is what it looked like. Now it's time to work on the fabric bows. I'm using a pattern that I actually created myself when I was making my own hair accessories and selling those. It's a fairly easy pattern, and I just thought I would use a bow instead of the fabric yo-yos because I like bows better than yo-yos. I'm just stitching the bows together, right sides of the fabric together, and then I'm working on the little top part that I secure the bow with, because I actually hand stitch that part of the bow together. I wanted to show you how I actually hand stitch the faux leather to the slipper. I actually had to pin the faux leather to the stiff interfacing, and I'm showing you these pins, these clips actually, that I use to clip all over the slipper so that I can work on slip stitching the faux leather to the slipper. It was just too hard to pin them together, all the sections together, because of that stiff interfacing. So that's why I used the pins to keep the interfacing to the faux leather, and the clips helped keep everything attached together so that I could easily remove them as I slip stitch the slipper and the faux leather together. And that's what I'm working on right here. Even though faux leather is much easier to work with than regular leather or real leather, I still had a bit of a time trying to stitch the pieces together, but I did it. Back to the bow. I stitched it, I turned it and pressed it. Now I'm going to stitch the ends together. Once I have that stitched together, I turn it around, and that is going to be the outer section of the bow. And this is the part, the middle part, that I sew hand stitch to the actual slipper so that I have that cute little bow on my slipper. And that's what it looks like, and it's ready to be stitched onto the slipper. And there it is. Isn't that so cute? I love it. They're cute. Can't wait to wear them. So these are my usual house slippers. I've had them for over a year. Yes, that's my dog. And these slippers have seen better days. And here are my new slippers. Look at that. I love them. They fit my feet like a glove or a slipper, whatever. But they are just so comfortable, and I love how well they fit. And I just think they're going to be really cute when I wear them around the house with my fancy little house dresses or my house coat. And there you go.
Well, that was really fun. I enjoy making slippers. I've made only one other pair of slippers from this book before, and it was really easy. It was fabric and no leather, no faux leather involved. Again, the book is Boutique Slippers, designs by Lorine Mason, and I still have the patterns in my book. So these, the ones right here on the cover, as well as on the back, are the slippers that I made in this video. And before, I've made these. I don't know if you could see them. Can you see them? I don't know. Okay, my review of the slippers. Okay, these are my slippers. The original pattern calls for these yo-yos, like fabric yo-yos. I guess there's a yo-yo maker, but I think you can make them yourself. I think my mom and grandma used to make them, something with fabric and stitch the ends together, and I don't know. I've only seen my mom and my grandma make them. So, but I didn't really like pay attention to that. So if you're out there and you make yo-yos without a yo-yo maker, you make them by hand, let me know if you still make them and if it's actually easy to do. So the original calls for the yo-yos on the top, but I didn't want to have the yo-yos. The button's cute. And I think I might put something in the middle of the bow, but I just love bows. They're just so cute. And I know this one's probably a little bit too big, but I don't know, a big bow, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's cute. Another thing is it's supposed to be a Mary Jane slipper. And if you're familiar with Mary Jane shoes, they have this shape, but they have like the little strap across the top of the foot. And in the pattern, the strap is actually more of like an accent, if you see it right there. So looking at the front picture, I didn't even know it was a Mary Jane until I actually opened the book to see the pattern. And it's called the Mary Jane slipper. And I was like, where's the strap? So even though I technically used the placement that is on the pattern, it's kind of a high placement for the strap. You see that? It's kind of high, but I kind of brought it out and secured it to the slipper itself on the side instead of the original called for it to be placed like here at the top and secured at the top. So I like my version. I think if I were to make these again, I would put the strap lower and keep the bow. And I might either sew or glue something here on the bow, just like an accent of maybe a red, maybe some cherries. I don't know, something. It needs something. But I liked the colors that I used. I wear a lot of teal. I have teal dresses and teal tops. I don't know why. I like teal and turquoise. I don't even know if they're good colors on me. I just love the colors. So that's why I chose to use this color pattern. And I was debating whether I should use the plaid on the outside or on the inside. So I have some plaid pieces in my wardrobe, but I thought the paisley would be cute. What do you think? Did I make a good call? They're on my feet in my own home. I'm not going to go out in them, but I'm going to wear them every day until the bottoms wore out. In the video, I talked about it in the beginning. I did use regular leather and it was expensive and it was so hard. Even using a regular, like a real leather needle, I couldn't. So faux leather, it still feels nice. And how is it going to wear over time? I don't know. I've never used it. Typically when I would make those other slippers that I showed you, I would use like the fabric, like, you know, when little footy slippers, footy pajamas for kids, the bottom of the little footy part has those like little grippy like dots on them. You can buy that. And so I would buy that fabric and put it on the bottom on the soles of the slippers instead of, because it just called for regular fabric. But I would buy that special footy pajama fabric and put that on the bottom. And it it didn't wear out as quickly as regular fabric, I noticed. And also if you're walking on slippery floors, and it didn't slip as much. So if you're going to make slippers with that kind of bottom, I would suggest using the grippy footy pajama bottoms as opposed to regular fabric. It was really fun, and I know I haven't made a video in a while. Things have been crazy, so I'm gonna try to be putting out videos every week. I'm not holding myself to that because just things going on in my life are stressful enough. Not like nobody has stressful lives, but I can't hold myself to a video every week. So have some grace with me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and you have a blessed rest of the week. Bye.